August 2025. The skies over Jerusalem were a heavy, oppressive gray, the clouds hanging low as if pressing down on every ancient rooftop. The air was thick, carrying the faint scent of dust and metal, evoking the feeling that the city was under siege by some unseen shadow. Inside a sealed chamber, cut off from the lenses of the media and the ears of curious onlookers, two powerful men sat face to face. On one side was Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, a leader who had stunned the world with his uncompromising speeches against the dictates of global powers. Opposite him sat Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, a veteran player on the board of international politics. This meeting was not on any official diplomatic schedule. No national flags, no ceremonial protocols, no journalists, just a long table, the soft glow of yellow lights and layers of heavy security outside the door. Beyond those walls, the world teetered on the edge of War of the Worlds 2025, a conflict unlike any in human history, as a coalition of the world's powers faced an unprecedented extraterrestrial threat. Israel, with its strategic location and advanced defense systems, was at the very front line. Netanyahu, known for his iron stance, seemed somehow different today. His voice was low, each word carrying weight in the already suffocating air of the room. President Traoré, I need your help, not just for Israel, but for all humanity. Silence filled the space. The faint hum of the air conditioning seemed louder than usual. Traoré leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on his counterpart. He did not answer immediately. Behind him, the red and green flag of Burkina Faso swayed gently in the airflow, though in this room the tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. When Traoré finally spoke, his voice was deep and steady, like a command. Prime Minister, the world burns not only because of the enemy out there, but because of the wounds we have inflicted upon ourselves. Before you ask for my help, show me what you are truly ready to change. Netanyahu swallowed hard. He knew this would not be an easy conversation. He drew a deep breath, leaning forward. President Traoré, time is running out. They are getting closer by the hour. Whatever we argue about today will mean nothing if we don't survive tomorrow. Traoré did not blink. He knew exactly who Netanyahu meant by they, the alien forces that had shaken the entire world. Yet his eyes seemed to cut through the layers of words, searching for the truth behind the plea. Prime Minister, Traoré said slowly, you cannot build an alliance to protect humanity on a foundation of injustice. If you want me by your side, start by ending the policies that have made millions lose faith in us. Netanyahu's brow tightened. He understood this wasn't just a request. It was a political condition, one that, if accepted, could shake the power balance he had maintained for years. And if I agree? Netanyahu asked cautiously. Traoré tilted his head slightly, a faint, cold smile crossing his lips. Then we won't just fight them. We'll change the way humanity exists afterward. Outside, the distant wail of sirens began to echo. Both men knew that the time for words was quickly running out. The sirens outside continued to wail, as if Jerusalem had become the eye of a storm no one could stop. Inside, Netanyahu rose and walked to the bulletproof glass window. From there, he could see the dark skies ripped open by streaks of white light, stretching from the horizon toward the city's skyline. They were not fireworks, nor civilian aircraft. They were global Defense Alliance fighters racing toward the southwest. Netanyahu turned back, urgency flashing in his eyes. They're approaching the coast. Our satellites just confirmed the third formation has broken off. If they seize the refueling point in the Mediterranean, we'll lose air defense capabilities within 48 hours. Traoré remained seated, his hand resting lightly on the dark wooden table. He showed no sign of panic. On the contrary, his gaze remained measured, as if he were weighing each of Netanyahu's words. Prime Minister, you want me to believe the greatest threat comes from out there? Traoré asked evenly. But I have seen empires collapse not because of an outside enemy, but because of the cracks within. Netanyahu gripped the armrest of his chair. And what are you implying, that Israel is the danger? Traoré did not respond immediately. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if recalling the countless international summits where promises of unity had been made, only to be broken by the ambitions of individual nations. He had witnessed pledges turn to ash, treaties crumble into irrelevance. I'm saying, Traoré opened his eyes, locking them on Netanyahu, that if we want to survive the War of the Worlds 2025, we must dismantle the old games of power. Otherwise, no matter who the enemy is, we will destroy ourselves. The tension was so thick that the sudden knock on the door made both men turn sharply. The door swung open, and a man in a black suit entered. It was the United Nations ambassador for the Global Defense Alliance, long considered the go-between for rival powers, but today his face was pale, and his eyes carried a sharp edge of alarm. Gentlemen, we have a serious problem. Netanyahu stepped forward quickly, his tone sharp. Speak now. The ambassador took a deep breath. The communications network between our bases has been breached, and the source of the signal is not extraterrestrial. Traoré's brow furrowed. What do you mean? The origin is right here on Earth, and the coordinates point directly to a classified facility belonging to one of your two nations. A dead silence fell over the room. Netanyahu locked eyes with Traoré. Traoré's hand clenched tightly, his knuckles whitening. If that's true, Traoré said quietly but with force, then this war is not only against the enemy out there, but against the very hands that have betrayed humanity. No one spoke. Outside, the sound of wind howling through the narrow gaps of the building seemed to merge with the wailing sirens, creating a heavy, oppressive soundtrack to the moment. Netanyahu took a half-step back, his eyes locked on Traoré, as if trying to read every flicker of expression on his face. The UN ambassador stepped closer, his voice low but tense as a drawn bowstring. We retrieved a data storage device from the breached communications system. This device contains an internal authentication code and a digital signature that matches one of the highest-level intelligence agencies from your two nations. Traoré gestured with his hand. A security officer entered, placing a small metal case on the table. The case opened to reveal a sleek, thin device, its polished surface gleaming as though it had just been pulled from a secure vault. Netanyahu glanced at it briefly before turning sharply to Traoré. Are you implying that I, or you, have been colluding with the enemy? Traoré did not answer immediately. He stood, walking slowly toward the table, his eyes fixed on the device's small screen. Lines of encrypted characters scrolled slowly against a black background, each string a layer of hidden secrets. If this is real, he said, his voice like steel, then one of us has been sheltering a snake in our house. And when I find out who it is, I won't need any council's permission to deal with them. Netanyahu's fists tightened, but his tone remained controlled. Then we share the same goal. Find the truth. But remember this, Traoré. If this signal leads back to your nation, I will show no mercy. The ambassador looked from one man to the other before continuing. There's more. We've detected a secondary source of the signal, a form of parallel encrypted transmission. It was sent to a location outside the Alliance's jurisdiction, and surprisingly, it wasn't protected by alien technology. Which means the one behind this wants us to find it, Traoré interrupted, his eyes narrowing. The air thickened. Netanyahu slowly nodded. A trap. Not just a trap, Traoré replied, but a message. The question is, who is it meant for? Outside, the deep rumble of jet engines vibrated through the walls, making the bulletproof window shiver slightly. A flash of light streaked across the sky, casting a brief, sharp glow into the room before darkness reclaimed it. The ambassador signaled for the technical staff to take the device to an adjacent room for analysis. As the door closed, Netanyahu stepped closer to Traoré, the distance between them now barely a pace. Listen to me, Traoré. We're being led into a confrontation where both of us will lose. But if you think I'll bow down because of a few scraps of data, Traoré cut in, his voice unwavering. I don't want you to bow, Netanyahu. I want you to open your eyes. The words echoed in the room, followed by a long, heavy silence. Somewhere nearby, a low explosion rumbled, making the entire building tremble. The door to the technical room swung open again, this time not only with UN personnel, but also two data analysis specialists in white coats. One of them carried the device, now connected to a portable large display. The endless lines of code had stopped, replaced by a flashing notification. Decryption complete. We've unlocked the main file, the specialist reported, his voice rough from urgency. And there's a video inside. Both Netanyahu and Traoré moved closer at once. The screen flickered to life, the first images hazy, as though filmed by a hidden surveillance camera. A dimly lit room, the light source faint and from one side. In frame stood a man in a gray suit, his back to the camera. The specialist adjusted the feed, the image sharpened. When the man turned toward the lens, both leaders recognized him instantly. The former United Nations security advisor, who had vanished a year earlier in what the media then called an unavoidable accident. His face was now gaunt, his eyes cold and unblinking. His voice, deep and deliberate, filled the room. If you're watching this, it means the game has already begun. The enemy you think is coming from the skies is only part of the truth. Netanyahu leaned slightly forward, suspicion flashing in his eyes. Traoré remained still, each word landing in his mind like a heavy stone. "The rest," the man continued, "you'll have to uncover yourselves, before it all ends." The screen went black. A chill hung in the air, a silence so complete that even the faint hum of the lights seemed intrusive. Traoré looked at Netanyahu, no longer with mere suspicion, but with the dawning realization that both of them were being maneuvered into a far larger game, one where they were not the players, but the pieces. Netanyahu broke the silence. "It seems the real mastermind wants us to tear each other apart before they strike." Traoré gave a slow nod, his gaze drifting toward the flag of Burkina Faso, its colors shifting gently in the air-conditioned breeze. "Then we have only two choices: keep doubting each other, or flip the entire board together." Outside, the sky blazed once more with flashes of war, the war of the worlds. 2025 raged on across every front, but now an even greater question loomed above them. Who is truly pulling the strings of this war? The noise outside suddenly swelled. One of Netanyahu's security aides burst into the room, panting. "Prime Minister, radar just detected an incursion into our airspace 12 minutes ago, but there's no sign of any alien craft." Traoré asked immediately, "Then it's human?" The aide nodded, eyes still wide with shock.
Yes, and the strange thing is, it's using the call sign of the Global Defense Alliance Rapid Response Force.
Netanyahu turned sharply to the UN ambassador, his voice tight as a bowstring. "Was this mission authorized by anyone?" The ambassador shook his head. "No records at all. If it really is them, then it's either a splinter group or a unit that's been stolen." Traoré folded his arms, his gaze like a blade. "Or it's a decoy, to cover for whoever's truly pulling the strings of this war." No one replied right away. Outside, the distant thuds of explosions echoed, a sign that somewhere the fighting was intensifying. Netanyahu walked slowly toward the table, staring down at the now dark device, as if searching for answers from cold metal. He looked up at Traoré, his voice lower now. "If you're right, then the real enemy is already among us, and winning against the aliens won't mean a thing if we let it survive." Traoré stepped forward, closing the gap between them. "Exactly. And to do that, we have to tear down diplomatic walls, shatter the barriers of suspicion. We need information and absolute transparency." A sudden blast shook the entire building. The lights flickered violently before stabilizing. Security personnel instantly raised their hands to earpieces, speaking in rapid bursts. One turned back to report. "A Global Defense Alliance weapons depot on the outskirts of the city has just been attacked, and the perpetrators used the exact same signal code as the earlier incursion." Netanyahu clenched his jaw, then turned to Traoré. "We won't have much time to decide. Either we work together now, or we destroy ourselves." Traoré nodded, then fixed his eyes on the ambassador. "Set up a secure communication channel. From this moment, not a single piece of information leaks out. If necessary, we'll trace back through every command tier in the alliance." The ambassador hesitated briefly, then nodded. The three men left the room, walking down the long corridor toward the War Operations Center. At the far end, a massive screen displayed a world map, red flares pulsing continuously, marking zones of active conflict. In that moment, Traoré knew that the War of the Worlds 2025 was not just a battle for survival against an extraterrestrial enemy, but a race against a shadow force willing to sacrifice all of humanity for its goals. And he knew, if they wanted to survive, he and Netanyahu would have to become allies, if only for a while. The War Operations Room blazed with bright lights, the air thick with the hum of computers and the rapid exchanges between officers and analysts. On the main screen, The world map pulsed with constant red flares, while a yellow circle flashed around the Mediterranean, a sign of an unusual event just detected. A technician shouted from the control desk, "We've just received a new signal. It's coming from the satellite system controlled by the Alliance itself." Traoré and Netanyahu strode quickly to the secondary display. Data streams scrolled so fast they were nearly unreadable, but after several seconds, an image began to emerge. It wasn't a tactical map. It wasn't an image of alien craft. It was a live video feed. The footage showed a room enclosed by bulletproof glass, inside which was a long table lined with people, all dressed in black uniforms with no insignia, their faces partially obscured by masks. At the head of the table sat an older man with silver hair and a razor-sharp gaze, speaking into a device broadcasting across global channels. Filtered through anti-interference systems, his voice was still crisp and deliberate. "We have seized control of the main communication lines. Nations will never know who truly commands this war. They will only see the puppets, and they will keep fighting until they can fight no more." Netanyahu's fist tightened, veins bulging. Traoré clenched his jaw, eyes locked on the screen. The silver-haired man went on, "When this war ends, there will be no alliance, no opposition, only a new order, and we will be the ones to shape it." Suddenly, one of the masked figures turned and stared directly at the camera. He pulled off his mask, revealing a young face with eyes cold as ice. Netanyahu drew in a sharp breath while Traoré froze. That man was a former high-ranking officer who had once served directly under Traoré. A cold shock ran down the spine of both leaders. Netanyahu turned to Traoré, his voice low but hard as steel. "It seems the snake is in your own house." Before Traoré could reply, the screen went black, leaving the operations room in a heavy silence. Outside, the alarm sirens wailed again, this time longer and more urgent than ever before. Traoré inhaled deeply, eyes fixed on the map still blinking with red points. "Then it's time. We hunt the snakes before we kill the dragon." But deep down, both men knew. This war had just entered a new chapter, and the true enemy had yet to fully reveal itself.